Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
1. Identify use cases like reading student name and contact details and display in a required format. You can use Python to read student name and contact details from a data source, such as a file or user input, and then display them in a required format. Here's a simple example using a dictionary to store student information and formatting it. Hash sample student data. You can read this from a file or user input. Name equals input, enter the name of student. Contact equals input, enter the contact. Hash function to display student information in the required format. Print student name. Name format name. Print contact details. Contact format contact. You can customize the format and data source according to your specific use case. 2. Compare and contrast input and raw_input and identify its appropriate use. Input and raw_input are both used to receive input from the user, but they function differently. Input. It evaluates the user's input as a Python expression. It expects the user to enter valid Python code, and it attempts to execute it. If the input is not valid Python code, it will raise an error. Example. Python. User_input equals input, enter a number. Raw_input. It reads the user's input as a string. It doesn't evaluate the input as code, it simply treats it as text. This function is mainly used for taking text input from the user. Example. Python. User_input equals raw_input, enter your name. Appropriate use. Use input if you want to receive user input as a string text, or if you intend to process the input as Python code. Use raw_input only if you specifically need to receive user input as a string and don't want it to be evaluated as code.